Hey everyone, it is Chrissy at Pinovate. This tutorial is for our DIY shaker. These are so adorable and so cute and a lot of fun to make. So follow along and we'll make this together. Okay, so let's open our kit and pull out all of our supplies. You're going to receive 3 wooden cutouts of your shaker, as well as a piece of acetate in that same shape, a selection of paint, a bunch of awesome sequins, some makeup sponges to paint with, a piece of sandpaper, and the only other thing that you might need would be some masking tape. So let's collect all of your supplies and we'll get started. For the first step of creating our shaker, I need to do a little bit of sanding. So the pieces that I want to sand are going to be my back piece. I'm going to actually skip this middle piece, so this is the thicker piece. I'm going to set that to the side, and then my top piece. So the 2 thinner pieces I'm going to sand. However, when I'm sanding them, I need to be very, very gentle because they are quite delicate and they can break in any of the smaller areas. So I do want to be very gentle when I am sanding this, and I just want to make sure that everything is nice and soft around the edges. A quick little sand, and then we're on to our next step. So again, just remembering to be very, very delicate when we are sanding. So I finished my sanding on my back and on my top piece. This middle piece, the thicker piece, does not need to be sanded or painted. So I'm gonna just set this aside and I'm gonna work on my backing. So this is going to be the very, very back of my shaker, the solid piece. I'm going to paint this one solid color. And for that, I'm going to use my yellow. I'm gonna make it nice and bright. And to paint this, I'm gonna actually use my makeup sponge, the very, very back of it here, and I'm only using a small, small bit of paint. So I'm dabbing up a little bit of paint, and then I'm actually taking off most of it, just so I have a small amount. We only need a small amount of paint on here. If we get any kind of overlapping of paint, it's not going to dry properly. They won't line up on the edges. So we want to take our time and make sure we're doing a really good job. So that's why we only need a small, small, small amount of paint. So now when I go in and I paint this, instead of going back and forth and brushing like a sponge brush, I'm actually just dabbing it straight up and down. And I'm just doing one solid layer. But because it's just a nice small amount, this is gonna dry really quickly, and it protects the edges from getting too goopy with lots of paint. So I just finished my first coat, and it's a nice, even, level coat. If you want to do a second coat on yours, just give it a few minutes to dry and then go ahead and do a second coat. It'll make that color pop nice and bright, but the key is to make sure that that paint is nice and flat and even to ensure that our shaker can adhere properly together and stick together like a puzzle piece. So make sure that your paint is nice and flat. So now I'm moving on to the top part of my shaker. This is the front. This is the piece that you're going to see. And on here, I'm gonna actually do several colors. So this is where your masking tape is going to come in handy. I'm going to just tape off where I don't want certain colors. So I'm going to paint my cake bright pink. So I'm going to just tape off my candles really quickly so I don't overlap onto them. Okay, so I've blocked off my candles, and now this is the same process that I'm going to use for my cake. So again, I'm using a makeup sponge, and I'm gonna go into my pink, take a little bit, and then dab most of it off. Again, we only want the smallest amount. We can always add more paint later, but we can't take it off. It causes a little bit of trouble. So now I'm just going to gently paint this front portion of my cake. Again, straight up and down motion, not rubbing side to side. So I finished my first coat. I'm gonna let that dry and do a second coat. So I've done 2 coats on my cake now, and I'm ready to just pull off my masking tape. Again, very carefully because these are delicate pieces of wood. I'm gonna let this dry, and then I'm going to masking tape off my next section to paint. All right, so I'm ready to tape off my next section. So I'm going to be doing my candles right in the middle. So I want to tape off my cake as well as my flames. All right, I am ready to go. All right, for my candles, I'm gonna use gray for this one. And again, I'm using just a small portion of my makeup sponge, taking a small amount of paint, taking most of it off, and then we're dabbing. Okay, so I finished my candles. Once that's dry, I'm gonna move on to my flames. Okay, so now this masking tape can come off. I have a nice solid line there. And again, nice and delicately, because this wood is so thin that it could possibly break, so we want to make sure that we look after it. Okay, so I'm gonna just tape off my flames really quick again. And for this color, I'm gonna try and make a new color. So I want my flames to be a little bit orange. So I'm gonna take a little bit of my pink and some of my yellow and mix those together to create kind of an orangey shade. A little bit more yellow. All right, so I'm happy with that shade. Now I'm going to do the exact same thing at the top on my flames. So tiny little bit of paint, small little amount, and again, we're just dabbing on top, straight up and down. And once that's dry, we're just going to peel off our tape and see our final painted product. Awesome, we're ready for the next step. So now we get to start assembling our shaker. So I have my backing, it's perfectly dry, and now I'm going to grab my centerpiece. So this is the thicker piece. I'm gonna line them up, make sure I'm putting it on the correct way. So now I need to find the back of it. So I'm peeling all of these little pieces off. So this is very strong double-sided tape. I just want to peel all of these off and then press it gently on top and apply kind of medium pressure until they are stuck together. Okay, so my backing and my middle section are stuck together and we're ready to go. Time for our sequins. So now we're gonna start putting sequins in these open areas. Now we don't want to overfill because the shaker's gonna need room for them to move around. So I'm just going to put a few in each of these areas in here. There, and I'm happy with that. I'm not even using all of my sequins. I just want a few in there to be able to move around. Okay, so for our next step, we want to apply our clear acetate to the top of this to make sure that all of our sequins stay in. So in order to do that, I'm going to peel off all of these pieces of tape again and then press this right on top. So first I want to make sure that this is the right direction. Yep, that's the way. And now we get to start peeling. All right, so I'm applying my acetate right on top. I'm lining it up carefully before I press down. We're almost done. So now to apply the top piece of our shaker, I'm going to again peel off all of this tape, line it up very carefully, and apply medium pressure. That's it. Your shaker is all done. Thank you so much for following along our DIY shaker tutorial. I hope you had a lot of fun making this because I sure did, and they're a lot of fun to play with. We would love to see how they turned out. So if you could tag us on Instagram at Pinovate and DIY Delivery, we get to see your work and see how much fun you're having with it. And if you get a chance to follow us, we are on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter and Pinterest and Instagram, of course. So thanks again for following along, and we'll see you soon.